I worked just shy of 40 years, but my pension still wasn't going to be enough for us. So when he called out of the blue, offering a free pension review, I was all ears. He spoke professionally about investments. He seemed a really decent guy. Just shy of 40 years pension. He took all of it.
Let me bring in the journalist and Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens and principal of South College, Durham University, and former BBC executive, Professor Tim Luckhurst. It's great to have you both here. Peter Hitchens, do you agree with Michael Burke that this wokeness infiltrating the BBC is now putting freedom of speech at threat?
Well, of course it is. The BBC is as important in our society as the medieval church was in the 14th and 15th centuries. It controls so much of how we think, of what we see, of the areas that we're allowed to discuss and the way in which we discuss them, whether it's in news and current affairs or in drama and soap operas, which are immensely important in setting out the kind of ideas which are acceptable in society, and in programs such as Woman's Hour and even Doctor Who. A whole set of attitudes are embodied which everybody feels that they are expected to follow. And so the power of that organisation is huge. And if it does, as it has been doing for some time, simply to leave off the edges quite large numbers of perfectly legitimate positions, so they're never presented or only ever presented with mockery, then it has an effect. And I think that Michael Burke is right to say that this problem has grown greatly in recent years. In simple personal objective terms, I've found that the BBC, which I used to say to people, my fellow Conservatives, they shouldn't attack too much because the alternative would probably be worse. And also that there were many people of integrity within it who really did genuinely believe in impartiality, has increasingly begun to exclude me. And I've found things I haven't, for instance, been on BBC Question Time, which I've been on pretty much every year since 1996. I came off the show in March 2018. I haven't been asked back since the COVID
Very telling. Exactly, since you spoke out against the COVID orthodoxy.
Yeah,
Tim
Luckhurst. Most parts of it.
Yeah, Tim Luckhurst. The BBC is starting now to even stop its discussion shows being able to discuss the issues of the day. Surely you accept that your former workplace is really putting freedom of speech under threat?
I don't agree, Dan, but it's an interesting discussion. The BBC is a colossal organisation. It serves a multiplicity of audiences on radio, on television, online, and many of those audiences have different interests. There are bits of the BBC which I think have got a less broad range of ideas represented on them that they used to have in the past. And for that reason, I think Peter, for whom I've got a great deal of respect, he's a brilliant columnist, makes an interesting point. But I think that across what the BBC does online, on radio, on TV, at home and abroad, a huge range of views are represented. I think the BBC's big challenge at the moment is that it's desperately trying to ensure that the licence fee remains relevant. And that means that in parts of its service, it needs to appeal to a younger audience. And that's a younger audience which you might call woke. I think they'd call themselves kind, but I'm a supporter of free speech too, so I understand the concern. But I think, yes, there are areas where the BBC is trying to appeal to a younger audience.
OK, but Tim, can I take the example of Question Time that Peter raised? It's a really good point. If you are someone who is considered right-wing, if you're on Question Time, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be 4 against 1. Plus, you've got Fiona Bruce. We know what side of the fence she's on. It's not a fair fight.
Interesting. I mean, people are very fortunate to be invited onto Question Time. It has a tremendously large audience, and I think it represents a range of views. But it's the classic BBC range of views, and I'm not critical of that. The BBC range of views has always been within the bounds of opinion represented in the House of Commons. It's very much a creature of parliamentary democracy. So if your views don't exist within the spectrum between the centre of the Conservative Party and the centre-left of the Labour Party, then you're probably not going to be popular on the BBC. I can remember defending the right of Nick Griffin to appear on Question Time. I disagree with everything the man has ever said. I think he's an idiot. But I nevertheless thought it was appropriate that he should appear on Question Time. If the point is that the BBC is not taking those risks anymore, I think you might have a point. And I think that's a shame, because I think risky speakers should have...
And Peter Hitchens, the issue is it feels like the BBC are laughing in our face. Peter, I'll let you come in just after making this point.
I need to respond to this, because if Tim's suggesting that the exclusion of people such as me from Question Time is the equivalent to the exclusion of Nick Griffin...
Not at all, Peter. I wouldn't dream of comparing you. You're far too intelligent.
In deep waters. I don't think that's so. I'm not. I don't believe that I'm remotely comparable to Nick Griffin. The problem is that many people in the BBC think that I am.
Yes,
they think that because I'm a conservative,
well,
I'm a
if that is the case, Peter, they're profoundly wrong.
That is a BBC view. And the other point I should make...
Well, they were outraged about having Nigel Farage on, weren't they? And he's a mainstream figure.
No one can complain on Nigel Farage's behalf that he didn't get a fair crack on Question Time. But that's a different question. What I'm trying to say here is that Tim says that people are very fortunate to be invited on Question Time. That may well be true. The fact is that I was seen as part of the spectrum and perfectly acceptable every year from 1996 to 2018, and suddenly it stopped. Now, I can't have been that bad if I was invited back that many times. I can only be useless at answering the questions, or a terrible broadcaster, or uninteresting. Something else must have happened. And I've dropped off quite a large number of the daytime midday political programs, onto which I used to be invited quite frequently. That's gone. The Andrew Neil program, as we all know, ceased to exist. I can't go on that anymore. I used to be on.
Well, Peter, you know what the issue is, don't you? You know what the issue is, Peter. You are a white man. That's what the issue is.
I can't finish a sentence without If you don't want me on, I could always go away. I've got a perfectly good evening to pursue. If you do want me on, let me finish the sentence. Okay? Deal?
Well, this is a debate, so I'm just having to keep it going, Peter.
I can go any time you like. It's absolutely nothing to me whether I stay on this program or not. You invited me on. If you're going to invite me on, do not interrupt me in mid-sentence. Is that okay?
Well,
it's just rude, and it makes it impossible to have a discussion or to finish a point.
No, but you're making very long points, Peter, and I'm trying to get both of us to have a discussion.
May I respond to that? Would that be okay?
It takes longer than 2 seconds to make. If you want to have Mickey Mouse points made by people who make them in 10 seconds, ask somebody else. But if you've asked me on, do me the courtesy of letting me finish what I was saying. I was listing the programs that I've been excluded from. I think that Mr. Luckhurst, who insists that nothing's going wrong, needs to address the fact that someone of my position, I'm not Nick Griffin, I'm not some kind of fascist, is being excluded, and since the COVID panic, has been almost entirely excluded. And I have to tell you that this goes back a heck of a long way.
Well, you've made a very long point, so let him respond.
Can't be so complacent to say there's nothing going on.
Dan. I mean, I think, Peter, that you're making one mistake. I don't disagree that you haven't appeared recently. I don't disagree that you're a very good broadcaster. I read your column and I think it's fantastic, and I admire your journalism. I think the problem is perhaps the one that keeps me off BBC programmes, and that is your age. The BBC is seeking to appeal to a younger audience. It's not about your politics. It's about your age. Now, that's a mistake, because the BBC ought to recognise that the majority of its licence payers are in fact over the age of 40, that it must appeal to younger audiences, but it can't do so by excluding older contributors. And that in fact, it would be a very good idea to have Peter Hitchens of the Mail on Sunday on Question Time, because Peter Hitchens of the Mail on Sunday represents a substantial body of opinion and makes very good points. I'd be perfectly happy to make that case. And if you'd like me to launch a campaign on this programme for Peter Hitchens to appear again on Question Time, I'll be delighted to make that suggestion, provided Peter Hitchens will.
Well, the thing is, I think you're partly right, Tim, but it's the point that I was trying to make earlier is that it's not just because he's old. It's because he's a man. He's a white man. He's a straight white man. And the BBC doesn't really like putting many of them on these days, especially not if you work for a centre-right publication.
If you'll excuse me, can I respond to this?
Yes, Peter.
Thank you. I reckon I have a very good face for radio. And I don't think that this rule that Tim has just invented applies to this at all. There are many people who are in journalism of my roughly the same age and experience as I am, who are on the radio, male and female, who carry on appearing and are actually indeed invited to present programs. I've never been. This whole discussion arises out of Michael Burke, who's talking about the moral maze and how he thinks that's being narrowed and cribbed and confined. Many years ago, when the moral maze panel was being reconstructed, the then producer thought that I should be part of it, and I was supposed to be given a trial. I suddenly realised the trial was rigged, that I wasn't getting anything like as many gigs as the others, and I made inquiries. I found out that I had been vetoed, that I was never going to pass the trial. I was never going to be on. This is long ago that the BBC took this kind of view. It's nothing to do with age. There are plenty of people my age and older, I'll bet you, on Question Time. They just don't have my politics and my opinions. It really is. It really isn't about that, and never has been. It's about entirely different things. I think it's a dodge, honestly.
Fascinating debate. Thank you for having it. Final quick point to you, Tim.
Maybe it's about being succinct, Peter. I mean, television's a very brief medium. I suspect that if you made your point...
Tim, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. I don't want to get my head bitten off again. But look, you know I always love having you on, Peter Hitchens. Do come back. And you too, Principal of South College, Durham University, and former BBC executive, the Professor, Tim Luckhurst. Thank you very much to you both. So who do you agree with?